Hello everybody, my name is KingStix and welcome back to another AMA. Let's just jump right into it. First question comes from 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐞. I'm having problems with my camera control in game. I cannot not hold my spacebar, but I find myself missing out on details during team fights, and because of it, I feel like I'm holding myself back too much. Any tips? During a team fight, I recommend not having your camera on lock unless the enemies are diving on top of you and you can't really tell where you are. As a newer player, I would recommend keeping camera lock. If you are getting more and more comfortable not using it, try not to use it at all unless you are getting dived on top of and you can't tell where you are. Me personally, I do not use camera lock unless I can't tell where I am, or if it's a thick team fight or someone's right on top of me and I want 100% control of my champion and camera. Clairvoyantly asks, I've been playing a lot of Vi, what do you think about her? And what build should you build? I've been going Warrior, Triforce, Sterix most games. That build sounds fine. It's primarily geared towards damage. If you are going to be going that, you should be looking to end your games no later than the 35-minute mark. Vi does fall off pretty hard in the late game, so you don't want to be dragging it out. 14-day ban ×2 asks, what are your thoughts on the proposed damage nerfs to Duskblade? As a 𝐾𝐨𝐩𝐞 main, I feel it is a bit unnecessary as many AD assassins are having a hard time at the moment besides 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞. Do you think the champion buffs will offset this damage deficit? I agree with you 100%. 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞 is making it harder on AD assassins, and people like 𝐾𝐨𝐸𝐞 do not need this nerf. 𝐾𝐈 is already struggling enough as it is. I'd propose just nerfing 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞, or at least the slow on his passive in the early game. As a jungle main, it's frustrating when a 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞 is being very aggressive. There can be very little counterplay if you don't get vision on him before he gets on top of you. With the passive, he gets a massive slow and damage on you, and then if you lose vision of him again, like if he steps into a bush or you leave the bush and he's still in it and he hits you, that's another slow and you're pretty much just dead. I'd recommend just nerfing 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞. It seems like that might not be necessary because 𝐾𝐈 is getting a pretty big buff in an upcoming patch. They're going to be buffing his invisibility in the early game, so 𝐾𝐈 really should be fine. I do agree though that it is unfortunate. Buff Dude asks, Electrocute Twitch is still the best for jungle or PTA now? Electrocute, I think, is still better than Press the Attack, at least in the early and mid game, which is where Twitch really needs it. In the late game, Press the Attack is probably better for shredding tanks and things like that, but it's really hard to go wrong with the Electrocute build. It gives you quite a bit more punch in the early and mid game, which is what Twitch really needs. Matteo Full asks, is it better to do Baron or push turrets when you get an ace? And how do you know what is the best way to gank a lane? Well, I'm just going to answer the Baron or turret part because I'm not quite sure what you mean by the last question. If you can out teamfight the enemy team, but they have more map pressure than you, if you think you can take the inhibitor, and then you can go teamfight at Baron if they go for it, or just contest it after you get back from base. If you do not think you can get an inhibitor and you ace the enemy team, if you cannot get an inhib, you should really just go for the Baron, that way they don't get it. Pawn WP asks, what are your thoughts on Kayn? What rune should I take and when should I pick him? I don't really think you should be picking Kayn at all while 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞 is this powerful. 𝐃𝐨𝐸𝐞 will demolish you in a one-on-one. He also has more carry potential with his massive jump. He can really get in there in situations where Kayn can't. If you do insist on playing Kayn, your only real option is going for Electrocute. The other keystones aren't that viable on him. Predator kind of sucks. It lets the enemies know you're coming, and with how stealthy Kayn is, I think it'd be stupid to take something like Predator. And if you're going for Dark Harvest, well, there goes your early game damage. So, I mean, you really don't have a whole lot of options. So it's basically Electrocute or nothing. Rystart asks, what are your opinions on Hecarim in the current meta? Will tank nerfs affect him, and should I pick Hecarim against any specific champion? Hecarim counters low mobility, low tanky enemy team comp, so if the enemy team doesn't have a tank and they're low mobility and then they don't have someone like Janna to pill you, Hecarim is a really effective pick because he can get in there very quickly and enemies can't escape him because of his ultimate. In general, I wouldn't recommend picking him because he has two main issues. One, his first clear, he's very low on health. It's easy to counter jungle you if the enemy is a strong early game jungler, and it's easy to outgank him because if Hecarim goes, Hecarim's gonna be lower on health and they should lose the 2v2. The second issue is in the late game, Hecarim falls off pretty hard. In the true late game, when everyone has full items, Hecarim isn't that useful. If Riot fixed one of these issues by buffing his early clear or buffing his true late game, then I think you'd be seeing a lot more Hecarim. For the time being, I just wouldn't expect playing him at all. He's just really not that great. Donner Johnny asks, what's the hardest matchup for Zac? The hardest matchup is an enemy jungler who knows what they're doing and is strong enough in the early game to counter jungle you. It's hard to counter jungle Zac if you do the Raptor, Red, and Golem start, but if the enemy jungler gets a laner or himself to lay a ward on your red buff and figure out what jungle route you are doing, they can go into your opposite side jungle and clear it out. Velasco asks, is Jax a solid jungler? The answer to your question is yes. I wouldn't recommend picking him unless the enemy team has 2 or 3 auto attack based champions. That way you can use his E and you're essentially a tank. Jax is one of the strongest level 3 soloists in the game with his E. You can solo pretty much anybody. Take advantage of his early game and you'll be winning a lot of games. Belo asks, tracking enemy jungler in gold plus elo seems to be hard because of unpredictable moves junglers do. What do you think? If you are someone who is playing reactionary as a jungler, it can be very difficult because they take random paths. However, if you are a proactive jungler, you shouldn't have any issue. For example, let's say the enemy jungler is a Rammus. You are on top side of the map, he is on bot side of the map. You can assume he gets a leash from his bot lane. If he doesn't, because like we said, they're unpredictable and he's dumb, then he's fucked. His clear is going to be messed up. He's going to be very low health and it won't matter anyway. So assuming he does get the leash from his bot lane, he should do raptors or wolves and then his next buff. So you just be around there in that general time frame and kill him or be in that area. And if you do go to that area to kill him or take his buff and you see him show up on the opposite side of the map, you can take the buff for free anyways and then go gank. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really affect anything as long as you are a proactive jungler. If you are a reactionary jungler and you're waiting for a counter gank and you don't know where they are, then yeah, it can be a real issue in that elo. Rio asks, thoughts on Kindred jungle? Is she similar to that of Twitch or any carry jungle? Kindred is a carry jungler. The issue is she needs time to scale. And her scaling is a little bit fickle because she needs her marks. So if the enemy jungler doesn't let her get her marks for free, and if she doesn't keep killing enemy champions who have her marks, she doesn't scale properly and then she just kind of loses. Kindred is a very unstable pick and I wouldn't recommend picking her as a jungler. Min asks, best way to get used to playing unlocked cam? The best way to get used to playing it is not locking your camera unless someone is right on top of you in a deathmatch fight, and just try to use it when you're looking around, either in between CS or in between jungle camps. Try to just get used to moving it around with your mouse. You might also need to buy a better mouse. I know some people's mice that they use whenever they are playing video games suck and aren't that good. For example, my girlfriend's was a garbage mouse that came with the computer that she bought because she didn't build it, and it was probably like a $4 mouse. It was absolutely horrible, so I bought her a new one and she's gotten a little bit better at mouse control. And mouse control is a huge aspect of playing with unlocked camera because when you're playing unlocked camera, your mouse is how you are looking around. Plasma King Snake asks, a couple of master players I follow have said that from their experience, smurfing in gold is the easiest elo to climb compared to bronze, silver, and plat, because players there generally have the best attitude towards the game and are pretty decent at the game by that point. They also say that plat through diamond 5 is the hardest elo to climb, mainly due to toxicity and boosted accounts. Do you agree with this? I partially agree with it. It is highly overstated whenever people say that, but the truth comes in whenever it gets to around D5 elo or higher plat elo, because there's a lot of boosted people who fell from D5 down into plat, and there's a lot of people who got boosted in the D5 who are still there. And these players typically come from silver or gold and they just want that diamond border and they keep playing in ranked and absolutely ruin their teammates. And to avoid this, you can simply OPGG your team before the game even starts, so you have someone with like a 30% win rate overall and dodge it. It's very easy to do. In terms of attitude, I'd say attitude is almost purely based not on the elo but on how the game is going. Even if you have someone who is a true toxic asshole, we all know a player like that. Even if you have someone like that, if you are winning the game, that player typically doesn't lash out or say anything because they're winning. They don't care. Toxic players who have bad attitudes only lash out and do things whenever they feel like they're gonna lose or have no control. So as a smurf or a booster, if you are playing in an elo where you are dominating and you truly have control over that game and the enemy players, you don't run into those issues. But when you get into plat and diamond, first of all, players get a little bit better. Obviously, you're gonna lose a little bit of control, therefore toxicity is gonna go up a little bit. And like I said, the second aspect is there are a lot of boosted D5 players who are still in that area. So it is partially true. I partially agree with it. It's just a little overstated. Zeagle asks, how to become a one trick? To become a one trick, all you have to do is primarily play one champion for around 70% of your games. You don't even have to be good on that champion. You could just be a bad one trick, but being a one trick it defines you as you play primarily one champion. Mindstep asks, your opinion on Rek'Sai. Also, what do you think about her ult rework? What would you prefer? I honestly preferred Rek'Sai's old ultimate. Her new one is very easy to dodge if you have a dash in your kit or a flash. It's just very simple. You know where she's coming from, wherever she was when you could see her. she's coming from that same angle right at you. You just flash it and she misses all of her damage. 𝐂𝐥𝐨 is an insane early game jungler. She has really high damage, high health, high healing, high clear speed. If you don't make a lot out of her early game though, she falls hard in the late game, which is why I personally don't play her. I feel like playing Warwick, he does this very similar thing. He's very strong in the early game, very difficult to deal with, and in the late game he falls off. So by me playing or maining two of those kind of champions, I don't feel like would be beneficial for me. Old Ham asks, how do you end games early as an early game jungler? The key is an early game jungler to end your games early, that way you don't fall off. And to do this, after you get a kill, don't just go back to farming your jungle. Try to take the turret after getting the kill. Push the lane, take turret, then go to the next lane, kill lane, take turret, go to the next lane, kill lane, take turret. And in between getting kills and taking turrets, try to get the dragons as well. This should lead to an early victory. A big mistake you will see with early game junglers is they'll get a kill, then they'll go into their own jungle and farm. If you feel like getting the turret isn't a possibility for one reason or another after you get a kill on a laner, try to go in the enemy jungle. If you go into the enemy jungler's jungle, if you are stronger than them, and kill them and take their jungle. But in general, if you are ahead and you're snowballing, don't go back into your own jungle and farm after you get a kill. Doc Nasty asks, do you plan on making a King guide in the future? Not unless he gets buffed or 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐿 gets nerfed. Dulce Daddy asks, ever since the Warwick bugs, which champion that has the same style should I play instead until it is fixed? I would highly recommend something like 𝐿𝐿 or maybe 𝐃𝐨𝐲𝐿. They're both very similar. I'd say 𝐿𝐿 is more similar because 𝐿𝐿 has more sustain in the jungle and probably a little bit faster clear speed, and its level 3 on 𝐿𝐿 is insane. 𝐿𝐿 is definitely a good pickup while you are not playing Warwick. PCG Sober Z asks, what would be the best clear for Hecarim in his current state? If you want to get off an early game gank, I would say get your leash from your bot lane. Let's say it's on blue buff, and then you would work your way up to wolves, then do red buff, then gank. If you do not want to do an early game gank because the enemy jungler is someone really powerful like Lee Sin and you don't want to fuck with that, I would recommend doing a bit of a power clear and trying to get as many camps as possible, but skipping Gromp in your first clear. Andre J asks, will we ever get a face reveal? Most likely. Forshetta asks, do you dodge unwinnable games even in promotion series to maintain your MMR? Yes, I do always. I don't really care about losing a few LP or losing a promo game. If I have like 2 or 3 teammates who have insanely bad win rates, it'd be no point in trying to play that. You just get really frustrated and have an autistic fit. Toast Drafty asks, what is your favorite champion to play in 1-for-all? Haven't played 1-for-all in a while. If I had to guess though, I think it'd be pretty fun playing Taric. Dano9097 asks, do you ever upgrade your refillable potion to corruption potion on Rammus? If you're referring to Rammus jungle, no, never do that. It's a complete waste of gold and resources. If you are playing Rammus top, that might be an interesting choice. Noodle Lee asks, how do you as an AP mage beat a Xerath? It seems he just constantly pokes me down without any way to beat him in lane. Short range mages like Annie can really struggle against Xerath because he just pokes you down. I would highly recommend on your first back buying Boots of Speed. That way, even if he does get your skill shot on the center of your hitbox, you can dodge it just simply by moving fast enough. If you do not have boots, Xerath can hit you. That's just the bottom line. Let's pretend Xerath is scripting and you do not have boots yet. There is zero possibility for you to dodge a skill shot unless you have a dash in your kit or you flash it. That's just the bottom line. You're not moving fast enough to dodge it unless you have boots of speed. Alex Pollock asks, what do you think are the worst champions right now? I'd say Gragas jungle is probably one of the worst. His clear speed is atrocious and his ganks aren't that good since he gets lower on health. And I'd also say Fiddlesticks is probably the other worst champion. He's just disgusting to play. Very little in his kit, and his kit counters himself since his sphere pushes you out of his drain, and his sphere also pushes you away from his ultimate. Spicy question from Ziffy. How can someone like I Will Dominate be in Challenger when he sucks this bad at basic skills on simplistic champions? I'm actually frustrated watching this guy misuse his abilities in situations that a silver player would do better. I do not understand it. For those of you who don't really understand what he's asking, Ziffy private messaged me and asked about I Will Dominate's Warwick because he was watching his Warwick and he's making just obvious mistakes. That should help you to understand what he is asking. And the answer to your question is, players like I Will Dominate have good map sense. They know where they should be. They know where the enemy jungler will probably be. So even if they don't know what order, what sequence, or the timing of their abilities, they can make up for it with what they know about the game. So it can be really frustrating watching these high elo players make these blatant mistakes on an easy champion like Warwick, because then you feel like, oh, I should be that elo. It's very easy to think that way, but with their game sense and knowledge, they can usually make up for that lack of skill on that champion. Can't Catch Me asks, why do some top laners start with Relic Shield? Is it better than starting Doran Shield or Doran Sword? Some top laners start Relic Shield because of the passive gold it gives. Also, whenever the jungler comes, they can share the immediate gold of the stacks and get some healing. Top laners only do it if they feel like it's a farm lane, so let's pretend it's a GP versus something like a Malphite. That's a farm lane, so GP might start with a Relic Shield, especially if you feel like your jungler is going to camp your lane. It's a good thing to take, that way you can share the gold. If you do feel like it's a kill lane and it's going to be a tough lane, a tough matchup, I would never recommend starting Relic Shield. Peachy asks, what's your opinion on Graves right now? Any chance of making a video on him in the near future? My opinion on Graves is that he is a hardcore early mid-game range jungler. I believe he loses to many junglers like Lee Sin, Nocturne, 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐞. I do not really recommend playing him right now. He's very hard to balance since the fact that he is range and he is mobile. If Graves gets a buff or 𝐃𝐨𝐲 gets a nerf, I will make a Graves guide. And that is the last question. If you guys want to have your questions answered, head down to my Discord in the description below. Feel free to ask questions and participate in the community as well. These Discord AMAs do take a relatively large amount of time going through the questions, picking them out, and deciding what I want to say about them. So if you guys did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.